Mother is a horror film from 2017 directed by Darren Aronofsky. It's about Jennifer Lawrence's female lead, only referred to as Mother, who is trying to build a dream home with her writer husband, referred to as him, but then things get a bit weird when some very intrusive neighbors starts showing up. The first part of this video is spoiler-free for anyone who wonders whether or not they want to watch it, while the second half is my analysis about what makes it so horrifying. The second part does contain spoilers though, so don't watch it if you plan on watching the movie. There is many ways to interpret Mother, and a lot of symbolism. Much like The Fountain from the same director, the allegory and symbolism isn't really that cryptic, and you quickly start to pick up on it. It's a nice ego-stroking movie if you like figuring things out, and honestly, Mother isn't actually that deep. It's pretty obvious what everything means, which I will come back to later when I can include spoilers, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad. I didn't know anything about it when I first watched it, and it was a nice experience to just sit back and watch chaos unfold while thinking, aha, I see what you did there. People seem to label Mother as pretentious, and honestly, after watching interviews with Aronofsky, I have to agree. I didn't really think it was, other than some elements in the second half, until I started listening to him stroking himself about how much of a genius it is, because it was so unnecessary and in my opinion, not entirely deserved. Don't get me wrong, I liked Mother and I think it's a good movie, but it's not anything out of the ordinary when it comes to cleverness. Something that really bugs me is how Aronofsky keeps saying he wants this movie to make people talk for years to come, but then he also revealed exactly what it is about. He shuts down the discussion before it has even begun, and in the process leaves nothing left to be said. I think if you want people to talk and speculate, the best option is to stay quiet and vague. That being said though, here I am, talking about it 3 years later. Shit. One thing that was remarkable about the movie though was J-Law's and the other actors' performances. Her ability to express subtle, complex and relatable emotions when the camera is so close to her face caught me off guard, and I have to give it to her, it was good. If you have watched Black Swan and The Fountain, which are also by Aronofsky, and liked them, chances are high you're gonna like Mother too. If you on the other hand found The Fountain a bit pretentious and 3D 5U bait, you maybe won't like it. Rosemary's Baby from Roman Polanski in 1968 can also be compared to Mother, and they have a very similar plot. I have seen a lot of people calling Mother basically a worse knockoff Rosemary Baby, and I don't agree that's completely true. Yes, they have a lot of similarities, and I think overall Rosemary Baby is a better movie, and Mother even has a movie poster that's basically an exact replica. But I'm sure this is intended as a homage though, and it's mostly during the first half of both movies that they are similar. The execution, aesthetic, and pacing are also very different, so in my opinion, you can appreciate both at the same time individually, or if you dislike either, do it without comparing them. Rosemary's Baby isn't an allegory like Mother is, and I think only someone who hasn't seen and understood Mother would claim it's a ripoff. One of the things I appreciate the most in Rosemary Baby compared to Mother is the subtlety and point of climax. Rosemary's Baby has you questioning what's going on and who's really crazy almost up until the very end, whereas with Mother, unfortunately, I feel like you get it very early and it can become a bit annoying to then be spoon-fed exactly what you realized. It takes so much of the satisfaction away. This is why I also really liked the first half of The Fountain, because it made me feel smart. But then in the end, I was just left feeling like a child with misdiagnosed learning disabilities. In Black Swan, I think Aronofsky did this much better. Everyone knows the general story of Black Swan, but he still managed to keep me at the edge of my seat wondering who is really the crazy one, what is real and what is not, until the very end. But with Mother, it kind of just becomes a parody of itself, where by the end it's like, yeah, we get it. And it lived long enough to see itself become the villain, if you will. Despite this criticism though, I really liked Mother, and highly recommend it to anyone who likes horror, art film, drama, or anything in between. If you're dead inside like me and yearning to feel anything at all, this movie will definitely unsettle you, maybe shock you, and if you're a pussy like me, spook you. Why exactly I like it so much actually though, has very little to do with the most obvious plot and symbolism, and that's what I will talk about now. So if you have seen the movie, stick around. Otherwise, spoiler alert. So basically, Mother is just a never-ending anxious feeling of, oh god, what the fuck are these crazy people gonna do next? And the moral is, a bit pretentiously, that people suck. The obvious plot and allegory I've been referring to, in case you didn't know, is about how J-Law is Mother Earth, her husband is God, and they are represented as a human couple in a house where the guests is humanity. It's about the dynamic between the creator and the creations, and it's beautifully told chronologically by the Bible. Humanity is intruding on Earth and disregarding it while worshipping the Almighty God. You have the first guests, Adam and Eve, their children Cain and Abel, you have the Noah's Ark in there, and what I can only assume is Jesus. You watch the history of humanity through the horrified Mother Earth's eyes, while her neglectful and naive husband God continuously forgives them in exchange for worship at the cost of her health. But what really made me like this movie, and where I think it really excels, is the anxious feeling of intrusive guests that you don't really know how to deal with. And I think any introvert can relate. I think if Mother had focused on just being a home invasion film about crazy fans of an actual celebrity, it would have been a lot better. Because the first half is genuinely horrifying and to me at least was difficult to watch. But what is it exactly that makes us feel so horrified? Other than the intrusion, another aspect of the anxiety around the situation I'd like to address is the emotional labor of staying polite. Mother really hits the nail on the head when it comes to the feeling that you need to act a certain way, even if it feels very wrong and you really don't want to. Most people have an inherent politeness and kindness to guests, and it's very hard to avoid it even when someone is intruding and is asking far more of you than you feel is appropriate. This is most apparent when the first guest in Mother, Adam, arrives and he wants to stay, joking that he thought their house was a hotel. But then her husband doesn't see anything wrong with it and insists Adam isn't intruding. She is alone in the feeling that he is overstaying his welcome, so she can't turn to her husband, who is supposed to be her closest and most trusted kin. So to put it in fewer words, there's the initial uneasy feeling that someone is intruding, then the conflicting feeling that you can't say no to them, and then finally, the horrifying realization that you are the one who is the odd one out because no one around you can relate to your feeling. And Aronofsky takes this even further when later there's so much going on that the mother loses control of multiple situations around her. No matter where she turns, something breaks in the other direction, and no matter how many times she tells people to not sit on the fucking sink, she always finds people doing so. This really rustles my control freak jimmies, when first of all you don't have a full scope of what's happening, and then secondly your trust is betrayed, reinforcing your fear of giving up control. The horror displayed in Mother is the nightmare of an introvert who just wants the strangers to leave her intimacy zone without being judged as rude for it. In Mother, the guests are literally intruding into her body with complete disregard for how she feels about it, and they don't pick up on any of the signs she's showing. But it might not actually be just about an introvert who wants the normies to leave. She could suffer from actual anxiety, and I wish this is what the movie would focus on. Her not wanting to leave the house could be because she is Mother Earth and literally bound to it, yeah, but it could also be that her anxiety literally prohibits her from stepping outside. Her not leaving the house is only the first sign of irrational anxiousness, but then when the first guest who represents Adam arrives, Mother is already a bit suspicious in her tone when asking if he wants tea. And when she goes to get the tea, it looks like she even has a small panic attack, emphasized by the steam from the kettle. Have I mentioned how good the sound work in this movie is, by the way? There is no music, which makes every sound that much more intense and deliberate. Later, there is a scene when Adam first arrives, where Adam wants to move in, and God says, "We always talk about how this place is too big for the two of us," without even hearing what Mother has to say about it. How does he know whether she's okay with it or not? And this makes her seem like an asshole if she then were to tell Adam no. Your significant other is supposed to be your closest, most trusted friend who will take your side and see you. But here, God answers for her, just assuming what she wants, and doesn't even look at her properly to see what her opinion is. It seems like on an emotional level, they are complete and utter strangers. If she is suffering from anxiety, it is especially important that he sees her and picks up on the signs that she's not okay with certain things. Perhaps the movie is indeed not only from the perspective of Mother Earth, but also a woman with the actual, real anxiety disorder. These people could be behaving normally, but what we see is her disorder's interpretation of their interactions. I'm not gonna be that guy and say that she hallucinated it all and she was just crazy all along, but I think there is a lot of hints towards her either having a mental disorder such as anxiety or dementia, or just fearing the thought of being the crazy one. Being crazy and seeming crazy are practically the same to the outside observer, but the difference is a crazy person isn't aware that they are. Knowing that people think you are crazy and that your behavior does invoke that perception in people is very frightening, and especially to Mother, who is constantly being judged. Adam early on asks if Mother wants a drink, not only showing humanity's destructive, indulgent, and inconsiderate behavior, but also a low-key pressure for Mother to consume alcohol. What could have been a bonding experience over drinks turns into judging each other for being too promiscuous or too boring. If you're not sold on the idea that the mother could be both an allegory for Mother Earth and just a woman suffering from mental illness, how about the medicine she takes? When she is most anxious, she takes it, and it calms her down. And then when she seems to not be feeling anxious at all, she even washes it down the toilet. Another thing I've touched on is how nightmarish the movie is for anyone who suffers from control freakism. For control freaks, it's incredibly stressful to be in situations where you're unable to keep or regain control, and people are behaving unpredictably. The control freak doesn't like surprises or delegation, which is why all these events suddenly taking place in the house without Mother's permission, and then some of them even start painting her house, is so, with a lack of a better term, triggering. I think Eve, the second guest, is a good example of the type of person that creates control freaks in the first place. She doesn't do as told, she doesn't say anything about what she's planning on doing, she's using Mother's resources to make lemonade, trashes the kitchen in the process without cleaning, isn't careful when handling the glasses, and when she's actually helping Mother, she does a very poor, half-assed, lazy job that would be better if Mother just did it herself all along. She also rushes her to drink lemonade and have children, something that would upset anyone, but perhaps especially a control freak who doesn't like being told what to do. Later on, the funeral scene has many noteworthy things going on, but in particular, there's the fact that Mother didn't know it was happening until guests are already arriving. The anxious feeling is getting more and more abstract from this point on, and that can either be because the religious allegory is becoming more and more explicit, or, as I like to believe, because Mother's anxiety is making her interpret interactions more and more absurdly because of her condition. So, about halfway into the movie, Mother is finally pregnant, and God gets inspiration to write what will later become the New Testament. This makes him for the first time in a long time show love and care for her, and they are finally alone. She throws her medicine in the toilet because without all the people around she can relax. While isolation is no solution to anxiety and can actually make it worse, I think the key here is the fact that God actually sees her and doesn't disregard her for his own selfish pursuit of popularity as a writer. I think up until the part where Mother is pregnant is really good, but after, like I've mentioned before, it falls off. There is some value in just making an absurdly brutal show about how awful humankind is, but it's very excessive and gets boring very quickly, despite the vivid imagery and packed action. The last 10 minutes in particular are bad, and the ending is just yikes. It's not that I don't understand it, it's just quite simply that it's bad. The whole point of the house being literally her body and being alive and having a heart and stuff, and the glass stone that's her heart after the fire and shit, is also too much in my opinion, and I think Aronofsky could have gotten away with this movie not being seen as pretentious if he had just stuck with the theme of intruders. The biblical allegory would have been much better if it was subtle references and not the main story, but at that point, honestly, why not just not? So to answer the thumbnail, Mother is cringe if you don't like arty-farty slow stuff with symbolism, but it is kino if you like to safely behind the screen be trolled up a little bit, whether it's by feeling like your personal space is being harassed, thinking people suck, or looking at Jennifer Lawrence's zoomed-in face for 2 hours. And to answer the title, what makes Mother so horrifying isn't just, oh, humanity is ruining our planet, or religious people are horrible sheeple, or even that unwanted guest just won't fucking leave. To me, at least, what I find the most horrifyingly relatable is the feeling of not having control over a situation, and that I should behave a certain way, even though every bone in my body knows it's wrong, because otherwise I might in fact be the crazy one, and not them. It's like when you tell your family that you're a flat earther and proceed to try to red pill them on the matter, and they just silently give you that fluoride stare. So, too long didn't read this video, and even the movie's message as a whole. Fuck normies, lol! If you liked this video, I also made an analysis essay theory thing about The Witch from 2015, or Vivi Ich if you prefer, where I explore the 7 deadly sins. Hope to see you around, and have a wonderful day. Peace.